This review does contain major spoilers. I pretty much give the ending of the movie away. With 10 Cloverfield Lane, I feel my enjoyment of the film was massively hampered by the fact that the ending was spoiled for me before going in, so all the way through I knew what the big reveal was. I mean, it's like watching The Usual Suspects or Shutter Island or The Sixth Sense knowing what happens in the end. And it's really irritating. I feel as though I was robbed of my first viewing of the movie and jumped straight to the second, which is where you usually pick up the clues the filmmakers sprinkle throughout the film to enhance repeat viewings. This movie was originally called The Cellar and revolved around a young woman who wakes up in an underground bunker after a car accident with an old man claiming some kind of attack had occurred on the surface and it is not safe to go up. The entire film is centered on the question as to whether he's telling the truth and is a hero for having saved her, or is lying and is some kind of sick psycho kidnapper. Does our heroine take the risk and try to escape to the surface, or does she remain in the claustrophobic bunker where cabin fever is eerily settling in? What happened then was, either during filming I guess, or after it was completed, the project was bought by J.J. Abrams' production company, who decided to turn the film into a Cloverfield sequel of sorts, or at least have it set in the same universe. I really like the idea of different kinds of movies, different genres of film being released in the same franchise. It's a major blunder, I think, that the likes of Disney's Star Wars movies have, with all the movies having the same feel and tone, when they could have easily made a comedy Star Wars one-off, a small-scale horror Star Wars movie, etc, etc. I like the idea of a Cloverfield universe, despite not being a fan of the original movie, but I'm not sure about its execution, starting with the end of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Our feeble, scared, stiffless protagonist eventually does escape the bunker, leaving the old man played by John Goodman in a puddle of acid and intensifying fire. After spending almost the entire runtime in the bunker, she is finally free. Now the film can end and leave her fate up to the viewer. But no. She is wearing a custom-made gas mask that she made with her body protected and then sees a flock of birds fly overhead, suggesting the air is breathable and not contaminated. Again, a good opportunity to close the picture either before or after she removes the gas mask, which she does. But no, because then the bunker then explodes, which catches the attention of a massive alien spaceship, which comes hurtling towards her, pooping out a worm-like alien and farting out some green, presumably infectious gas. You can spot the exact moment that Abrams hijacked the film with his overdone, CGI-heavy, one-liner-loving style, which kicks into place from the moment the protagonist bizarrely, nonchalantly says something along the lines of, "You gotta be kidding me," after she witnesses proof of extraterrestrial life right before her eyes. From there, it's like the character was a completely different person, perhaps high on the drugs that the spaceship was puffing out, because all of a sudden she turns into an action man, single-handedly destroying the spaceship and then driving off to fight for a human resistance she just heard on the radio about mere seconds ago. Where has all this come from? Am I still watching the same film, the same intense, engrossing chamber piece set in the bunker? I know a lot of people really dislike the ending, and I do too, but my beef isn't the fact that they reveal that Goodman was right all along and there was an apocalypse. I like the fact that he was right all along. It's just the execution of how the reveal was handled that I was miffed about. There were so many different ways it could have been handled, from simply having her climb out of the bunker and then stay in shock at a crumbling world around her as the film fades to black. But all the jumping around, throwing firebombs at aliens and CGI giant worms just came off as really poor and really undid the tension of the bulk of the film. Especially since the movie chose to go down a route that you don't see too much of in mainstream movies, in that its entire foundation is atmosphere as opposed to spectacle. And yet we end up in the middle of a Marvel movie at the end. Still, I suppose to enjoy the movie more, we should focus on the journey and not the destination, and I think the time in the bunker is a fantastic exercise in suspense and tension. The protagonist has a complete distrust of Goodman's character, who feeds her information that she has no desire to believe. It's a fantastically terrifying situation to be in, and Goodman was really good in the role. He plays it in such a way that you're unable to decide whether he's crazy or truthful. Is he intentionally trying to scare her? Or has the apocalypse and the cabin fever just made him go a bit senile? I found myself intensely engrossed during the film's highs and quite interested during the film's lows. It doesn't drag, doesn't outstay its welcome. At precise moments where I thought that maybe this would have been better as a short movie because the premise is starting to get stale, a new plot development would emerge, keeping me intrigued. It was quite funny too. Some of it comes from the characters trying to make most of the depraved situation they find themselves in, and in other times it completely ended any tension that had been built up by a scene. Whether you see this as a good thing or a bad thing is up to you, but it does seem the movie doesn't just want to be grim and depressing and isn't afraid to give you a laugh or two. And I have to say, after having my hands over my mouth in shock over a particularly tense scene, the movie did very well to have me laughing my head off to Goodman shaking his big ass up and down to the exciters tell him only seconds later. I think overall the film was very suspenseful, very engrossing. It's telling that I only intended to watch the first few scenes when it was on telly and then leave the rest for a later date, but ended up watching the whole thing in one go. And this was really late at night. But the ending does drag it down quite a lot. It really is exceptionally sloppy and disappointing after the wild rollercoaster ride that was the meat of the film. It's a solid 7 out of 10 had the ending been touched up. I'll settle at a 6.